When I wake up, I can't find Mum and Dad. I run around the house and then the garden, shouting, but they're nowhere to be seen. The garden's eerily quiet. Even though I'm 10 now, I still get scared. There's a caravan by the bonfire, old and run down with bullet holes in the side. I imagine that a man lives in it, watching me, and I daren't go there alone. When I go past the chicken coops today, I notice an extra eeriness. I can't hear the chickens. I look in the coops and then the hen houses. I see a few piles of feathers, but none of our beautiful Rhode Island reds. I go back to the house, calling my sister, telling her Mum and Dad are missing and the chickens are gone too, and we sit in the kitchen, crying. And then they tell us about the chickens and how a fox got them in the night. Dad talks on and on. In fact, he talks so much that I often listen to his explanations like they're songs, letting them wash over me, enjoying the way they weave, their soothing sounds, but never truly grasping the words. 11 years old, and I'm nearly big enough for secondary school. I want to go to the girls' grammar because it gets the best results on the league table, and I want to impress my dad. He works from home now, has an IT company called Red Fox. I go to the back of the house where his office is, a room full of wires, lights, electricity, and I ask him how to become an athlete. I agreed to do the 800-metre race for school sports day, mainly because no one else in the class volunteered. Dad used to run for his county until he found cigarettes, booze and my mum. Jog around the garden 3 times, he advises me. Do it every day until the race. So I go out into the long grass, which hasn't been mown in months, and I run through the paddocks, which are now empty of sheep. I run past the pond, which froze over last week, and all the fish died. I run past the chicken coops, never replenished after the fox had its feast. And I run as close as I can to the caravan without getting scared. Then I slump on the driveway, out of breath. I look over at the vegetable patch, at the dandelions growing where once there were radishes, sprouts, and runner beans, and I wonder at what point it happened, this slow slide into apathy, this ending of childhood, of Radio 4 dramas on a Saturday afternoon, of holding Dad's hand and helping him make things grow and buzz. I stare up at the sky and notice that I can see the moon even though it's still daytime, and I remember that ancient feeling, the honk of geese as they strutted around the garden, the thump of ewes' feet running down the hill, the pant of the sheepdog, the scratch of the chicks, all that life, and it's fading fast. I don't bother jogging around the garden after that. I'd rather sit on my own in my room, remembering what life was like before we had to give away the collie because she kept running onto the road, before Dad announced at the dinner table on Christmas Day that he was turning vegetarian, before Mum stopped making piccalilli and sloe gin and began eating crisps and drinking wine out of a box, before Dad spent 4 hours a night at the pub, before Mum stopped smiling. This is the moment, I think, watching the moon where the sun should be. This is the moment that the spark has gone. After working at the European Space Agency, making satellites that took pictures of stars, Dad got a job with Epson. Then he quit not long after moving into Chimney Cottage. In his time at Epson, Dad designed one of the world's first graphical user interfaces called Taxi. He was on the front cover of the Times and other newspapers with headlines like "Taxi target is to pick up Mac traffic" and "Dr. Mackintosh takes on Apple." But Taxi never got far. Epson chose to concentrate on printers instead, which turned out to be a very shrewd decision. But I think Dad felt he'd always let himself and us down. Chimney Cottage, our own slice of the good life, I realise now was not a new beginning, but a last hurrah. The final attempt for Dad to make life perfect, to become self-sufficient, to be a star. In his final years, Dad used to text me from his office at home. "Just seen a fox in the garden," he'd say, or sometimes it was a deer, or pheasant, or rabbit, a wild animal seen through glass, while he sat inside, behind his screen. "That's great," I'd reply. "How are you?" At the end of its lifetime, a star will contain some degenerate matter. The smaller stars, once evolved, end up shrinking, often becoming white dwarfs and then fading away into nothingness over a long stretch of time. The larger stars, however, don't shed their layers like the small ones. They keep fusing and growing until they become so large that they can no longer support their own mass. Very powerfully and very suddenly, they collapse at the center, and this causes the rest of them to explode in a supernova. The spectacle is so bright that sometimes it can outshine a whole galaxy. All that remains when these largest stars have exploded is a black hole. My dad would be able to explain this to you much better than me. He'd be able to tell you how it happened and why, and he'd keep on telling you about it, explaining it until you couldn't hear the words anymore. You just feel the sounds moving around you, weaving in and out like wires, like runner beams, like electricity.